In the heart of the untamed Wild West, where tales were born and outlaws controlled the country, there is a zone of vast wilderness and lawlessness unlike any other. From the violent shootouts at high noon to the mysterious tales of vanished towns, these stories have remained in the shadows of time, waiting to be discovered. But do not worry, since the time has come to shine a light on the neglected and weird. Join us on an incredible trip through history as we explore 15 of the most unusual and extraordinary things from the Wild West. Number 15. Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail is an enduring icon of the pioneering spirit that inspired many people to go into the vast and uncharted wilderness of the American frontier. This legendary route, which spanned over 2,000 miles and passed through a tough, previously uncharted country, served as a lifeline for pioneers looking for new chances and a better life in the West. From 1840 until 1870, the Oregon Trail witnessed the hopes and hardships of individuals who risked to travel its treacherous route. The Oregon Trail began in the humble city of Independence, Missouri, and ran westward to the rich valleys of Oregon's Willamette River, providing a beacon of hope to people anxious to create new homes in the fertile plains of the Pacific Northwest. What began as a simple track used primarily by foot or horseback expanded over time. By 1836, the first organized wagon train had left Independence, ushering in a new period of Western migration. Caravans of covered wagons filled with provisions and thoughts of a better future set out on this hard voyage, crossing hazardous rivers, intimidating mountain ranges, and enormous prairies alive with untold dangers. Pioneers encountered difficulties along the road, including disease, adverse weather conditions, and encounters with Native American tribes. To survive the long trek, pioneers had to plan and prepare methodically, packing 3 sets of clothes for 6 months and relying primarily on preserved and dried foods. Number 14. Mummified Outlaw. Elmer McCurdy, a wannabe bandit, set off in 1911 on a misguided mission to rob an Oklahoma passenger train. McCurdy attempted to acquire a rich haul for himself, motivated by the notion that the train contained significant wealth bound for state banks. However, his hopes were dashed when he realized that the train did not contain any bank bullion, leaving him with only $46 from the attempted theft. McCurdy's ill-fated expedition took a tragic end when Oklahoma law enforcement agents located him 2 days later and shot him to death. However, this was only the beginning of McCurdy's remains' weird and horrific journey. Following his demise, McCurdy's corpse was embalmed with a normal arsenic preparation before being sold to a traveling fun fair eager to capitalize on his reputation as an outlaw. For nearly 6 decades, McCurdy's mummified body served as a macabre attraction at fairs across the Midwest, passing through numerous county fair outfits, haunted homes, and wax museums, all hoping to profit from his notoriety. In a weird twist of destiny, McCurdy's body ended up in an amusement park funhouse in Long Beach, California, in 1976. During the production of sequences for The $6 Million Man, McCurdy's body, which was utilized as a prop, experienced the indignity of losing a finger, leading the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office to intervene. Subsequent testing proved the identification of the long-dead criminal, forcing authorities to intervene and return McCurdy's remains to the Wild West, where he was ultimately laid to rest in Dodge City, Kansas's famous Boot Hill Cemetery. This closure puts an end to McCurdy's weird voyage, a journey in which his corpse unknowingly became a morbid spectacle, far removed from the dreams of the would-be outlaw who met his untimely death in pursuit of his criminal desires. Number 13. The Southpaw Puzzle. For years, historians and Wild West aficionados shared the assumption that Billy the Kid, the iconic criminal, was left-handed. This supposition was based on a well-known tintype portrait of him from his youth, in which he was wearing a gun belt on his left side and holding a Winchester Model 1873 lever-action rifle nearby. Observing this setup, with his right hand gripping the rifle barrel, it appeared natural to conclude that Billy the Kid preferred to shoot with his left hand, which was a characteristic that added a fascinating element to his problematic existence. However, following closer study, the truth about Billy the Kid's handedness is likely to diverge from popular belief. Tintype images were created using a method that produced a negative image first, which was then reversed to create the final positive image. As a result, the orientation of the objects in the photograph was flipped horizontally 180 degrees. As a result, contrary to what the photo suggests, Billy the Kid's gun belt was on his right side, not his left, and the rifle he was holding was most likely designed for right-handed usage. Furthermore, a closer look at the Winchester gun he was carrying reveals additional proof. The exact model had a loading gate on the right side. However, it may appear to be on the left in the photograph due to image reversal during processing. Winchester only made right-facing loading gates for the 1873 lever-action rifle, indicating that it was intended to better serve right-handed users. While it is possible that Billy the Kid was left-handed and acclimated to the common use of right-handed weaponry in the Old West, the photograph sometimes cited as proof of his left-handedness is not as conclusive as it appears. It serves as a reminder of the complexity of evaluating historical facts, while also challenging conventional preconceptions about iconic characters from history. Number 12. Iconic gunfight. When delving into Wild West lore, one cannot miss the iconic gunfight at the OK Corral. The very term conjures up a feeling of excitement and drama that has stood the test of time. This terrible event, which occurred on a dusty Arizona day in 1881, has left an indelible mark on history, gripping generations' imaginations. In this legendary battle, the Earp brothers, Morgan, Virgil, and Wyatt, were joined by the iconic Doc Holliday, and they faced off against a band of outlaws and troublemakers that included Claiborne, Billy Clanton, Ike Clanton, and the McClory brothers, Frank and Tom. When the gunfire subsided, the McClory brothers and Billy Clanton were dead, while Virgil and Morgan Earp were injured, but survived. What distinguishes this battle is its amazing shortness. Despite involving 9 men and a shower of gunfire, the entire conflict lasted only 30 seconds. Unlike the drawn-out gunfights seen in films, this encounter was quick and conclusive. In the flash of an eye, the West's most notorious conflict began and ended. The geographical disparity around the gunfight heightens the suspense. Contrary to popular perception, the shootout did not take place at the OK Corral. The altercation occurred on a public road behind the corral, which is technically located at the current intersection of 3rd Street and Fremont Street in Tombstone, Arizona. Thus, even the shootout's location is somewhat misleading. Number 11. California Gold Rush. The California Gold Rush of the mid-19th century is regarded as a watershed moment in American history, sparking a frenetic movement of fortune seekers following the discovery of gold at Sutter's Mill in 1848. The rumor of this rich metal's availability spread quickly, sparking a frenetic quest of fortune that saw an estimated 300,000 people travel to the territory in search of their golden dreams over a 4-year period, from 1848 to 1852. This flood of immigrants significantly altered the geography of California, resulting in the Wild West as we know it today. In the middle of this fervor, improvised mining camps studded the landscape, quickly transforming into bustling communities overnight. Small communities quickly grew into flourishing centers of activity, attracting people from all over the world. However, in addition to the never-ending pursuit of wealth, this age in history witnessed a darker side as well. As the gold rush grew more intense, atrocities and injustices occurred. Indigenous tribes were forcibly removed from their native lands, suffering violence, dispossession, and cultural annihilation at the hands of opportunistic settlers. The California Gold Rush not only transformed California's demography and economics, but it also left an unmistakable mark on the nation's history that will reverberate for years. Its influence reaches beyond the confines of time, shaping contemporary narratives and social systems. Many features of Wild West mythology and cowboy-themed entertainment that attract modern audiences can be traced back to this turbulent time period. Number 10. Gun control. The iconic image of the Wild West typically conjures up images of anarchy and gun-toting criminals, with weaponry playing an important role in the era's famous stories. Stories of shootouts, bandits, and daring rail thefts depict a society in which lead was more powerful than both the sword and the pen. However, the reality of gun control in the Wild West was far harsher than often assumed, with frontier communities enacting rules that would be considered strict by modern standards. Individuals entering the municipal borders of Deadwood, Dodge Municipal, Abilene, Garden City, and Tombstone were obliged to relinquish their firearms upon arrival. This was not a voluntary gesture, but rather a mandatory necessity imposed by the municipal government. Visitors were required to turn in their firearms at the local sheriff's office, where they would be given a token reflecting the armaments they were temporarily giving up. Essentially, this method served as the world's first coat check, except for guns. There was one exemption to this restriction for local residents. Those who were recognized in the neighborhood and had a relationship with the sheriff were usually permitted to retain their firearms at home. This exception was predicated on the assumption that known inhabitants could be trusted to utilize their firearms for domestic and family protection. These strict gun control regulations were enacted in response to years of criminal behavior and widespread banditry in the West. Sheriffs and town officials worked to guarantee that unknown guests were unarmed as they passed through town, lowering the chance of violence. While the image of the Wild West is often associated with lawlessness and unrestrained gun use, the reality was quite different, with gun control mechanisms in place to ensure order and safety in frontier villages. Number 9. Jesse James's burial. Jesse James intended to settle down at his ranch in Kearney, Missouri, after his renowned escapades of stealing banks and wreaking havoc across the West. However, his history came back to haunt him in the shape of foes with long memories. Despite his best efforts to remain silent, he was betrayed by an old opponent and murdered in 1882. Initially, James was buried in the front yard of his farm to avoid grave thieves, believing that his legendary renown might attract prize seekers. However, over time, his family chose to exhume his body and reinter it in a more secure place, Mount Olivet Cemetery in Kearney. However, the story takes a stunning turn. In 1948, decades after James's death, a guy named J. Frank Dalton claimed to be the real Jesse James. Interestingly, a court permitted him to officially assume the outlaw's name. Despite being proved as a fake, Dalton's narrative spread, especially in Granbury, Texas, where he was buried at the age of 101. Locals welcomed Dalton's claims, marking his burial with a tourist attraction dedicated to the renowned bandit. The disagreement about Jesse James's burial places lasted for decades, forcing scientific intervention. Scientists exhumed James's remains from Kearney using DNA analysis, verifying his identification using mitochondrial samples and rejecting Dalton's allegations. Despite the scientific evidence, the myth of James's burial in Granbury persisted, overshadowing the facts. As a result, many people still believe Granbury, Texas, is Jesse James's final resting place, perpetuating a historical fallacy. Number 8. The Great Texas Train Robbery. The Great Texas Train Robbery of 1904 is a fascinating incident in Wild West history, complete with daring outlaws, bold robberies, and unexpected twists. At its foundation, this crime comprised a sophisticated team of outlaws who methodically planned a scheme to derail a train carrying a large sum of money. These outlaws, skilled in disguise and cunning, fit the romanticized image of bandits that is common in Western tradition. The climax of this heist occurred when the gang flawlessly executed their plan, causing the train to derail amid a hail of gunfire and dramatic scenes. However, an unexpected discovery gave an ironic twist to the story. The money was not where they expected. The alleged money turned out to be a well-kept secret, cleverly concealed in a way that confused the burglars. This unexpected turn of events adds another dimension of drama to the story, making the robbers' painstaking plotting ultimately worthless. Despite their brilliant plan and brave execution, the outlaws were left empty-handed, underlining the unpredictable and harsh nature of frontier life. The Great Texas Train Robbery serves as a reminder that even the most perfectly planned crimes can be foiled by unanticipated events, leaving a trail of mystery and intrigue for future generations to investigate. Number 7. Donner Party. The terrible story of the Donner Party, set in the wilds of the West in the spring of 1846, is stranger than fiction. This ill-fated expedition, which consisted of American pioneers looking for a better life in California, set out on a journey that would permanently change their lives. Enthralled by reports of affluence and abundance in California's fertile land, the 87 persons, led by brothers George and Jacob Donner and local businessman James Reed, set off from Illinois in April 1846. However, their confidence quickly changed to despair when they confronted unexpected hurdles in the undiscovered territory. At its peak, the Donner Party consisted of 29 men, 15 women, and 43 children, who made solid progress until they reached the Hastings Cutoff on 21 July, a putative shortcut to their destination that turned out to be a perilous diversion. The harsh terrain taxed their fortitude, as they lost dozens of livestock and abandoned numerous wagons in the desert. The most dramatic episode of their journey began when they arrived on the Sierra Nevada mountains in early November 1846, when an unexpected early blizzard stranded them in freezing mountain passages. Forced to retire and seek sanctuary at Truckee Lake, now known as Donner Lake, the group faced depleted food supplies and cattle losses. As the hard winter arrived, desperation pushed the survivors to turn to cannibalism for nutrition, ingesting the corpses of their deceased comrades. Tragically, Native Americans who refused to participate in such practices were murdered for food. The Donner Party was eventually rescued 5 months after their ill-fated trek began, but only after undergoing terrible pain. Half of their group had died, and the survivors bore psychological scars that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Number 6. The Tale of John Wesley. Born into a world where saints turned into demons, Harden's journey was fraught with bloodshed and notoriety. Harden's journey into darkness began at the age of 15, when he took the life of his first victim in the chaos of post-Civil War Reconstruction. This first taste of violence fueled a ferocious craving for blood, propelling him on a decade-long spree of crimes, with official records indicating taking at least 20 lives, though unconfirmed estimates imply a figure closer to 40. Despite his illicit activities, Harden had an extraordinary capacity to dodge justice, frequently sliding past the fingers of law authorities, even when caught red-handed. However, his luck ran out when he was convicted of killing a Texas sheriff, which resulted in a 14-year prison sentence. Harden's time in prison transformed him, leaving him with a law degree and a renewed zeal for justice. After his release, he moved to Gonzales and practiced law, offering legal assistance to anyone in need. However, his political career was unsuccessful, causing him to go to the lawless town of El Paso. In El Paso, Harden's legal career was overshadowed by his fondness for barroom brawls and gunslinging. When the sheriff passed an ordinance prohibiting gun possession within city limits, Harden's volcanic anger erupted in a tragic conflict. Harden, enraged by his girlfriend's detention, threatened to take the life of John Selman, the officer who arrested her. In the harsh and merciless landscape of the West, quick action frequently trumped due process. Selman fatally shot Harden during a game of dice at a saloon, maybe out of self-defense, anger, or a desire to improve his own reputation. Surprisingly, Selman was acquitted, with the court seeing his actions as a benefit to society, freeing them of a known nuisance. Let's take a brief pause while we bring you our subscribers' pick. If you've ever watched the legendary TV series Gunsmoke, you'll recognize Miss Kitty's Long Branch Saloon in the outlaw town of Dodge City, Kansas. But what if we told you that this bar was not a fabrication of Hollywood's imagination? In truth, it was a legitimate establishment that still operates today. Miss Kitty's Long Branch Saloon was a lively watering hole where both locals and visitors could quench their thirst during the Wild West's rough and tumble days. Its origins are buried in mystery, and no definite date of establishment is known. However, its glory came to an abrupt end in 1885, when Dodge City was decimated by the historic Front Street Fire, which reduced the original saloon to flames along with many other businesses in the vicinity. Despite this loss, Miss Kitty's spirit survived, and the tavern was later rebuilt. While it may not have preserved the same spirit as its outlaw days, It remained a popular gathering place for both residents and visitors. Fast forward to the present day, and Miss Kitty's Long Branch Saloon still remains in a different function, acting as a sentimental tribute to the iconic television show Gunsmoke. Today, the saloon caters more to the show's fans, allowing them to journey back in time and experience cherished memories from their youth spent watching television. However, according to stories from Kansas historians and regional museums, the original Miss Kitty was a thriving hub of activity in its day. It was a vibrant hub where patrons could enjoy the flavors of the Old West, serving milk, tea, and lemonade, as well as sarsaparilla, beer, and other alcoholic beverages. Number 5. Bison Massacre. The Bison Massacre serves as a somber reminder of the Wild West's darker chapters, when the perpetrators of horrible atrocities were not just outlaws, but also powerful authorities. The American bison, which is now celebrated as the national mammal, was declared a nuisance by the U.S. government in 1870. Despite having over 10 million in the southern herd of the North American plains, their numbers had collapsed to only 500 just 2 decades later. What caused this disastrous decline? Surprisingly, it was a planned campaign to destroy Native American villages that relied primarily on bison for survival. These gorgeous beasts were vital to indigenous tribes, supplying food, clothing, shelter, and spiritual importance. To dislodge these settlements, the government sanctioned wholesale bison slaughter, with the goal of severing Native Americans' ties to their traditional way of life. The extent of the damage was astonishing. Every day, thousands of bison were massacred by hunters, with approximately 5,000 killed daily at the height of the genocide. The grasslands boomed with the roar of gunshots as hunters swooped on the herds, motivated by avarice and government decree. This merciless onslaught lasted uninterrupted until 1889, when the once thriving bison herd was reduced to barely 85 animals. The implications were terrible for both the bison and the Native American nations. With their principal source of food destroyed, indigenous populations faced starvation, displacement, and cultural upheaval. The toll went beyond just survival. Native Americans' physical stature, which was among the tallest in the world, fell as their traditional way of life collapsed under the weight of government-sanctioned genocide. Number 4. The Terror of Black Bart. Few individuals in Wild West legend engage the imagination as much as Black Bart, an infamous outlaw whose criminal exploits were only equaled by his literary flair. Born Charles E. Bolton, this California bandit made history with a series of audacious stagecoach robberies that took place between 1875 and 1883. What distinguished Black Bart from the many criminals of his period was his habit of leaving signed poetry lyrics at the places of his crimes. One of his most renowned works, "I've labored long and hard for bread, honor, and riches, but on my corners too long you've tread," exemplifies a combination of literary talent and audacious defiance that would have Shakespeare take notice. Despite his literary bravado, Black Bart's reign of terror came to an abrupt end in 1883 when he unintentionally left behind a critical clue, a handkerchief with his laundry mark. Pinkerton agents, known for their investigative skills, quickly tracked him down, leading to his arrest and subsequent 4-year prison sentence. For such a smart guy, the cost of justice appeared to be insignificant. Following his release from prison, Black Bart retreated into the shadows, leaving a mysterious legacy. Despite various theories and rumors, his ultimate fate remains a source of conjecture and controversy, adding to the mystery surrounding Black Bart. Number 3. Pony Express. In just 18 months, from April 1860 to October 1861, the Pony Express rose to prominence as a symbol of tenacity and invention, forever changing the face of long-distance communication in America. This trailblazing service, which operated at unprecedented speeds and efficiency, transformed the conveyance of messages over long distances, bridging the geographical divides of a rapidly expanding nation. The Pony Express was built around its brave and experienced horsemen, who embarked on risky travels across treacherous terrains and faced a variety of risks, from harsh weather to aggressive encounters. With nearly 200 strategically placed stations along the route and nearly 100 riders ready to relay messages, The Pony Express had a strong network capable of crossing incredible distances at breakneck rates. These courageous riders, racing across prairies and deserts, could traverse 75 to 100 miles in a single day, carrying critical messages with unparalleled speed. In 1861, the Pony Express set a record for fastest delivery by transporting a message proclaiming President Abraham Lincoln's election from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California, in just 7 days and 17 hours. However, the Pony Express had to cope with progress when Congress authorized the construction of a transcontinental telegraph line in June 1860. As telegraph connections improved, allowing for almost effortless intercontinental communication, the Pony Express gradually became obsolete, surrendering to the unstoppable march of technological progress. Nonetheless, the Pony Express legacy lives on as a mythical episode in American history, symbolized by the iconic picture of a lone rider galloping across the wild frontier. Statues commemorating the Pony Express dot the American landscape, acting as emotional memories of the courageous and adventurous spirit of individuals who braved the harsh terrain to deliver critical communications in the Wild West. Number 2. Ghost towns. Ghost towns dot the harsh landscapes of the Wild West, serving as haunting reminders of a bygone era when civilization thrived, but is now abandoned and forlorn. The sight of these abandoned settlements evokes both appeal and uneasiness, as they serve as silent witnesses to the stormy history of the American frontier. Many ghost towns in the Wild West are the result of natural calamities, economic collapse, and demographic movements. The ruins of these once bustling villages now exude a melancholy aura, with decaying buildings and dusty streets serving as the only reminders of their previous greatness. The Wild West, defined by sharpshooter competitions, lawlessness, and cowboy culture, was a time of fast development and exploration. However, as the frontier faded into history, so did the villages that embodied its rugged spirit. What remains are ghost towns, stuck in time, with deserted streets haunted by echoes from the past. The Wild West's beginnings may be traced back to early settlements in Jamestown, Virginia, in 1600, but its influence has stretched across Midwestern America. However, the conclusion of this era remains shrouded in obscurity. Did the Wild West end with the last cowboy gunfight, or did it fade away with the enslavement of Native Americans? Today's Wild West remains include deserted saloons, abandoned homesteads, and decrepit businesses. These ghost towns serve as heartbreaking memories of a turbulent era in history when the average individual suffered crime and misery despite the appeal of adventure and opportunity. While the romanticized image of heroic cowboys navigating the untamed wilderness remains in popular culture, the reality of life in the Wild West was frequently cruel and merciless. Number 1. Emu War. If you're looking for the most absurd story from the Wild West, look no further than the Emu War, which occurred in Australia in 1932. It may seem like a tall tale, but the truth is weirder than fiction. Consider this. Humans fought a war against birds, and they lost. Yes, you read it correctly. Following the Great Depression, ex-soldiers in Australia turned to farming as a source of income. Their already difficult situation was exacerbated when around 20,000 emus landed on their property during the mating season. These seemingly innocent birds quickly posed a threat to farmers' crops, necessitating drastic measures. Initially considered a protected species, emus gradually lost their status after wreaking havoc on farmers' farms. Thus began a full-fledged war against these seemingly harmless birds. Armed with machine guns, the farmers set out to defend their livelihoods from the emu attack. In the first salvo, the farmers successfully repelled a group of 50 emus, resulting in a brief win. However, their joy was fleeting as the emus returned in force the next day, numbering in the thousands. A single gun jam was all it needed to send the situation out of control, as the farmers quickly realized that fighting emus was no laughing matter. Despite their best attempts, the farmers were outpaced and outmatched by the speedy and agile emus. After a month of unrelenting fighting, the troops were forced to retreat, humiliated and vanquished by their avian opponents. One might doubt the need for full-scale military action against birds, But the conclusion of the Emu War speaks for itself. It is remembered as one of the most spectacularly unsuccessful conflicts ever undertaken by humans. Thanks for watching. More exciting content on the way.